We need to unite, but they have always been there to divide us, to be able to reign on us through slavery. Our ancestors experienced it, and until today, we have it fed up in our flesh, but it continues. Our great people were deported, tortured, and again when they had their war, we supported them, but they paid.
Our young men and women are running away, and remember the Germans are now saying we want young people. The Canadians are saying we want young people. We are in danger. You who have been trained in this institution, now go back to your countries and tell your countries that yes, there is a conspiracy against the continent of Africa, but the human relationship, is it not about conspiracy? Even in families, are there not conspiracies? Because we are divided. We have 55 telephone access codes. Nigeria 234, Ghana 233, Kenya 254, Tanzania 255, Uganda 256, Zambia 260, Zimbabwe 263. How can we, in this day and age, you cross into Benin, you cross into Togo, you cross into Guinea-Bissau, you have a different internet connectivity. Why can't Africa have a single satellite?
Hello, brothers and sisters. I hope you're all doing fine. Now, the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, has been going round to unite black people. Now, he has been making bold steps in ensuring that all black people come together and speak one language, the language of unity. Now, he has also been calling out France, the US, and all Western countries to the chaos they have caused to Africa. Now, in this speech, he calls out on all African diasporans to come back in Africa and invest. He's calling out on all black people to unite and speak the language of unity. So let's listen to this speech, then have a quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
Paid us in monkey money.
Ils nous ont payé en monnaie de singe.
Others were killed when they tried to stake their claim. Several of them died in their village as a result of the war. Never recognized the work of the African. Our mission is first of all to awaken Africa and do better, so that you from the diaspora can make people understand what Africa is. When I see you, united in this association, I feel even more proud because that's all we are asking for today. Our fight is to be able to unite, because united we are strong, divide we are weak. They have always worked to divide us, so I urge you to spread the message so that Africa can unite. We have been lucky or unlucky enough to live through war for several years, and at some point, we had to say enough is enough, that we are fed up. We have taken our responsibilities and we realize today more than ever that we were right to take our responsibilities. Because these armies that were installed here were never able at any time to monitor our territory, to see the terrorists who came to kill us and leave with all the means they had when we asked them to leave. Today, we were able to acquire an array of means that allow us to wage our war and ward off the threat, and contain it. I would say, we were able to equip our forces and replenish our
They can only serve their master. And these people, each time they try to manipulate you, you must advise each other. Because each situation can be exploited by these enemies of the nation to try to discourage you, to demotivate you. So you must advise each other and do not pay attention to certain words, even on certain media. Everyone is not obliged to be a patriot. You are the first patriots. You have decided to defend the country. There is nothing better than that. Those who want to support you, let them support you. Those who want to discourage you through writing, you must close your ears and move forward.
Alors, il faut qu'on se rappelle quelque chose.
We must remember something. Recently, there was a so-called NGO. It is not even a NGO because a NGO is a non-governmental organization. But they are not non-governmental because they are financed by a federal budget, by a state. This so-called NGO produces reports to say that the FDS and the VDP are carrying out executions. They came in and left here. It is to stain your morale. It is to scare you, to prevent you from being able to fight. No. Besides, we will take this NGO into account because people must understand something.
Il faut que les gens comprennent quelque chose. Ce qui nous arrive ici,
what is happening to us here? It is true that they have manipulated a part of our population in the Sahel, but they did not have this armament. What led to this important armament? It is Libya. Who destroyed Libya? It is this NGO, the same NGO that made these false reports and gave to whoever wanted to create a rebellion for people to intervene and make Gaddafi fall. And the powder is spilled in the Sahel. These millions of lives that were taken in the Sahel, we must take into account this NGO, because it is responsible for these false reports that it made to consolidate this thesis of attacking Libya. They have no moral lessons to give us. Look at the world. Let them defend human rights everywhere in the world before coming here. We have the chance to have similar situations in this world. You are engaged voluntarily. There are countries where we take force, we kill. You leave or you die. Others, even if they want to flee, end up dying. They do not speak of human rights because these people see us as subhumans. They see us as slaves. It's like that in their heads. They have never changed their logic, but it is up to us to show them that we are not slaves, and we will never accept this state of affairs. So there is no need to let yourself be overwhelmed by the story they tell, whoever wants to hear it. You have to stay focused on your fight. Stay focused. We know what we are doing. And even now, the commander of BVDP told me that there is a training session on human rights for the benefit of group leaders and their subordinates, which is ongoing. If we make an effort, we know that it is for us. We do not do anything to please anyone. We do it for our country. And you are committed to that. Defend your country. Do not listen to these individuals. They should not affect your morale. In the history of the world, there have been wars. And during the Second World War, people organized themselves to defend themselves, a little bit everywhere. But there was a country that could not defend itself, that had to come and take our ancestors to go and defend them.
Et aujourd'hui, ce même pays veut nous donner des leçons.
And today, this same country wants to teach us the hospital that laughs at charity.
No. Vous êtes les descendants de ces mêmes ancêtres.
You are the descendants of these same ancestors who went to defend the others, who freed the world from Nazism.
Aujourd'hui, vous vous battez pour vos terres.
Today, you fight for your lands. These same individuals dare to create terms to dirty you. We oppose this. We will never agree.
Continuez à défendre vos terres. Ce sont vos richesses qui intéressent ces gens.
Continue to defend your lands. It is your wealth that interests these people. It is our gold, our minerals that interest them. If not, why come and look for entire villages to take our lands? So we will fight and we will recover our lands. Our wealth belongs to us. It is to us that it will benefit and to our children. So I encourage you to keep in mind that this war is to get us out of slavery. It is for our independence. And you must keep your morale high. Stay up. We will never give in to the manipulators, to these individuals who no longer know this notion of homeland, or to these people who come from the outside to try to tame us through their terms that they invented and their organisms that they invented to serve us. Fight. Move forward. Do everything you can. Dive, as I said, into your cultural resources, into what you have been forging since the village. Dive into it and wage this war. Stay focused and stay up.
Vous êtes ces gens-là qui ont osé.
You are those people who dared to take up arms to support the different forces of defense and security, to fight to recover our lands. This does not apply to everyone. Everyone at his level can do what he can. Others are in business and contribute. Others try to communicate to encourage you. Others try to do what they can. But you have decided to take up arms and face them. We like to say that in times of war, there are two types of citizens. Those who wear uniforms called FDS, who must go towards death. It is their duty. And the civilians who must flee death because they are not trained for it. But in the history of peoples, there is always a moment when you find yourself confronted with your existence. Either you fight or you disappear. Today, Burkina faces its destiny. It is a question of existence. And at this crucial moment, among those civilians who must give water to death, you have decided to take up arms and face and support your brothers in arms. We cannot stop paying tribute to you. We cannot stop magnifying you. We cannot stop glorifying you. You are from Burkina Faso, and that is all we have asked. You have faced the enemy without knowing the enemy. Without having the same capabilities as the security forces. But you have faced it. Many of you have paid for their lives, but you continue to resist. What can we do to improve your working conditions? That is combat. First of all, the FDS has existed for several years. But it was not equipped, especially the notion of individual weapons. I think that this problem is more or less solved. All those who are VDP in the villages today have weapons. Anyway, there are still many who want to join, I am sure. All the villagers might want to be VDP, but we will go step by step. Because we have also asked the civilians to contribute, as I told you earlier, up to a level that should allow you to take charge.
In Nigeria, I do not have internet at an institution that deals with security. You get the point that I'm trying to make? It cannot be right. And I know why we don't have internet connectivity. It is because we are divided. We have 55 telephone access codes. Nigeria 234, Ghana 233, Kenya 254, Tanzania 255, Uganda 256, Zambia 260, Zimbabwe 263. How can we, in this day and age, you cross into Benin, you cross into Togo, you cross into Guinea-Bissau, you have a different internet connectivity. Why can't Africa have a single satellite and a single telephone code So that when I travel from Mogadishu in Somalia to Dhaka in Senegal, like the Chinese do, like the Americans do, like the Indians do, we can have the same, because communication is critical to development. And I'm saying this, part of my agenda is to prick your conscience with live examples, that you may go out there irritated, but irritated to do the right thing. And I'm suggesting that indeed, when we talk about development, this is what we must do. But is Africa conscious of her state? Yes, Africa is conscious. This is what makes me happy. That after all these analysis, it appears to me that Africans have now recognized that going forward, we can only defeat the conspiracies, we can only have development as we are talking about it by working as a team. And that is why, beyond the Millennium Development Goals, beyond the Sustainable Development Goals, we as Africans under the aegis of the African Union do now have our grand vision of Africa Agenda 2063. And that Africa Agenda 2063, let me tell you, if we can fulfill it, many of you here will be upstairs by the year 2063. But our contribution, perhaps you do not know what I mean upstairs, not up. You will be with the Lord himself. But the most important thing is that Africans are now beginning to see beyond the next election. Because part of our problem in Africa has been that we plan in 5-year circles. We don't have a grand agenda, but now we have a grand agenda. And if you look at the 7 pillars of Africa Agenda 2063, everything is covered. Health is covered. Research and science is covered. Climate change is covered. Women's participation is covered. Democracy and governance is covered. The arts and the culture are covered, so that Africa can become a serious player in the international agenda. As we speak now, we are not a serious player. You know, and I say this perhaps too often, but I must repeat it because it is important. I was looking at the GDP of Indonesia. The GDP of Indonesia this year, by the end of this year, will be 1.1 trillion United States dollars. Indonesia is the 17th largest economy in the world using all critical indices. It's amongst the G20. The population is about 200 million, just about Nigeria. Nigeria is a GDP give and take at the very best of 550 billion United States dollars. I'm looking at the power generation in Nigeria. At the very best, you generate about 17,000 megawatts. You lose about half of it, so that what goes into the grid is no more than 8,000 to 7,500 megawatts into your GDP. You are the biggest economy in the world. If you look at Iran, Iran generates 75,000 megawatts. So when we talk about industrialization, we are not even close to industrialization. Look at the diversity of power generation that you have. Most of it is hydro. You are not harnessing your solar. The Kainji dams and the other dams with climate change are going to dry. If you look at the major rivers, it means that you are going to be in trouble. You look at Zimbabwe now, for example, in power generation, 2,000 or give it 2,500 megawatts. The dams are drying, the Kariba is drying. So Africa must begin to think, even as we think of Africa Agenda 2063, because energy is the game changer. Without energy, all these generators you see everywhere in Nigeria must disappear for industrialization to come. And in many African countries, including my own country, Kenya, which generates, I think we have about slightly under 3,000 megawatts. You can't. You can't. So we must go to Inga Dam, we must begin to generate. We must go to Egypt at the Aswan High. Egypt is not doing very badly. We must go to Inga, produce 40,000 megawatts. We must go to Ethiopia, the Grand Renaissance Dam produced 10,000 megawatts. Then we talk of industrialization. And why do I talk about industrialization? There are scientists here. It is only through industrialization that we are going to be manufacturers in all sectors. As it is now, 80% of what we consume in manufactured goods are from China. If China closes shop, we are dead. We are dead. So I'm thinking that Africa Agenda 2063 is a good thing, but we must work at it. I'm thinking that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a good thing. Launched with the Secretariat in Accra, Ghana, a good thing. But how are we going to trade? How are we going to get somebody to drive a truck from Accra, Ghana to Juba or to Asmara in Eritrea without peace and security? So you can also see that peace and security is at the very heart of it. In the United States of America, and many of you are familiar, you can drive a truck from Florida through to Alberta in Canada, and it is safe. The roads are good, the security is there. I'm saying, therefore, that as we talk about development, we must think about development in a very comprehensive manner. We must ask ourselves how we govern. And I want to conclude my presentation to you by telling you that Africa must be very careful. We must be very careful because of lack of resources in Africa. I'm beginning to hear things that worry me. And because I'm a keen student of what is happening in Africa, I'm getting worried on a daily basis. The forces that divide us, the belief by many people in Africa that if we separated from our current countries, we would be better. It is beginning to happen. It is happening here in Nigeria. It is happening. I saw a letter last week addressed to the president of Zambia by a people in Zambia called Baroseland. And they are telling President Hakainde Hichilema that you remember in 1964 we had an agreement with the Lusaka government that the time has now come for Baroseland to become an independent country. Can you believe it? I hear people in Namibia saying, do you remember that there was a strip called the Caprivi Strip? I hear people in Ghana saying that you remember that in the Volta region we had a different country. I hear people in Zimbabwe saying that there should be a country called Mtuakazi. I hear people in South Africa, the South Africans, saying that we should have a separate country in the Western Cape. I hear people in Ethiopia saying we should have Tigray and Oromo. The centrifugal forces are there. And the only way to bring them in is to create a sense of belongingness. The people must feel that they are part of it. I remember the words of John Garang of South Sudan when he spoke in Khartoum. He told the Numeri government, we do not want to create a separate state, but make unity attractive. Make unity attractive, make Sudan attractive, make Khartoum attractive, because if you don't make it attractive, we will separate, and that will make us weaker. And I'm saying this because of this thing we call democracy. Democracy demands that people have a sense of belonging and that they believe that the country in which they live represents their interests and that deliberate efforts are being made in that regard. So, fellow Africans, I'm one who believes that this continent has a contribution to make. There is not a continent today that has the natural resources that this continent has. Not one. There is not a continent today that has a population as young as ours, which could be a resource. There is not a continent. There is not a continent today that has the resources in different diverse ways which can be harnessed. With a population of 1.4 billion, we are a potential market. But we must also warn ourselves. I am aware that you are talking about climate change. It is only through unity, therefore, that we can fight all these. Our rivers are drying. Lake Chad has shrunk by nearly 1/3. The rivers are drying. The climate is changing. The Sahara is coming down south. The rivers down are drying or getting polluted. Our farms are not yielding the way they were yielding before. Our seeds are being destroyed. Our young men and women are running away. And remember, the Germans are now saying, we want young people. The Canadians are saying, we want young people. We are in danger. You who have been trained in this institution, now go back to your countries and tell your countries that yes, there is a conspiracy against the continent of Africa, but the human relationship, is it not about conspiracy? Even in families, are there not conspiracies? Is it not our duty to fight and defeat those conspiracies so that that is no longer an excuse? Go out there and say that we have the possibilities and that these possibilities require and demand that we look at Africa as a total whole. Go out there in your little ways and make your contribution. The 78 of you who are graduating here today, I'm suggesting to you that development must start with you. Go back and let in every institution where you are, let it be said that since he came back from NISS, he or she is different. He is different in a positive way. And all of us who are here, whether we are politicians or academics and in different sectors, let us go out there having made a solemn vow that Africa must do it. If you can't do it for yourself, ask yourself which Nigeria you want to bequeath to your children and your children's children. You are here, maximum 40 years, you will have gone upstairs. But after 40 years, in which kind of country will you want your children to be? This is the question. It is not about you and me. It is about them. This is intergenerational. Africa must change. Africa can change. And it can only change if we change our minds. And our minds we must change. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Ibrahim Traoré has always been calling on the sovereignty and self-reliance of Africa as a continent. Now, he has been advocating for this for his entire leadership. Now, he has been saying more often that Africa cannot be independent if we still rely to get grants and aid from the US, China, and all these countries. That Africa has the potential to produce, has the manpower to do all the things it is required to do. Now, you must remember that the US and the European Union could not have achieved the success they had if it were not for black people, that they had to use black people as slaves to be where they are today. And this is why most of the times when someone like Ibrahim Traoré and Dr. Arikana PLO Lumumba talk about black reparation, that black Americans should be reparated, it is because they worked for free. They were no wages. They worked under very harsh conditions. Some of them actually died in the process. They lost their lives. So many people died when they were moving slaves from Africa to the other side of the world. So many people died in the containers. So many people, others died in the fields working for the US, working for the white people. So this is the time when someone like Ibrahim Traoré is talking about reparations and is talking about liberation of Africa. This is the time we as black people should support movements like this, because I feel like We left someone like Martin Luther King alone. We left someone like Malcolm X alone. And we've been leaving this Muammar Gaddafi on the other side until he was called a terrorist by the US and the European Union for advocating for whatever is right for Africa. In fact, Muammar Gaddafi was saying that the African children in the diaspora should come back. Then Africa to be united as a one country, as a one large country, with a single president, with a single currency, with a single national language. And for these things that he was doing in his country, he chased all the colonizers. He chased France, he chased the US and destroyed the army bases. And it is for this reason they termed him as a terrorist. And he was doing good for his country. In fact, before his death, the Libyan currency was the strongest currency in Africa, and it was stronger than the US dollar. So for these reasons, they hated him because the mineral resources in Libya were used to benefit the people of Libya. So when we as black people do not support such revolutionalist leaders, we can't support such Pan-Africanists when we do not show our own love that the West can have them on the table and destroy them completely, get away with their life. This is why we need to protect our own people. We need to protect the sovereignty of this continent. We need to protect this so that our own brothers can come home. They have been in slavery for the longest time, 200, 300, 400 years. Some of them have been born, raised in oppression. They have been seeing this systematic racism happening for the longest time. Some of them, they were born, raised without parents. After parents were adopted and they were absorbed so much into whiteness. So we say this is the time we black people should consider uniting ourselves, coming together and having unity. Let's stop the division that is happening. And this is why someone like Ibrahim Traoré, when he said that we should promote Pan-African unity, when he said that we black people should unite. The African continent is so much divided because we have 55 countries with 55 presidents, with a prime minister, with a king. But Africa is not united. People are talking different languages. We have so many sellouts in Africa. If you do something, someone will report you to Macron. Someone is going to say it to Donald Trump. If you have plans to unite Africa, some of the puppets in Africa will directly be summoned by the European Union or by the White House. Then you'll. This is why we say, if these puppets can't change, then we the people should change the leaderships in our own countries. Because if we have sellouts in Africa, those people who report directly to the White House, reportedly directly to the European Union, to Emmanuel Macron. This is why we have this continent torn apart. This is why we are calling our own brothers and sisters to come from the diaspora to come and live in Africa. But are we united yet? Are we united yet? And my question too to the diasporians, black diasporians, are you united? Because black people are not united wherever they are. That's the truth. And I don't fear to say this. If diasporians, black diasporians continue the same way, with the same division, that African Americans are not in good terms with the foundational black Americans, they're not in good terms with British Africans, they are not in good terms with British blacks, they are not in good terms with any other black person around the world. The same atrocities, the same problems that we've been facing, the same problems that Martin Luther King wanted black people out of, we will still see them. You will still cry for systematic racism. You are still going to cry for the oppression that is happening because you live in division, and that's when they thrive best. So I'm glad that we have someone who is championing for sheep and stability and trying to talk about black unity. This is Ibrahim Traoré, and we support every other effort that he makes to see the African continent one and black people coming together and speaking truth to power. This is whatever we've been lacking, that we don't have someone who can stand in and talk truth. We have lacked someone who have the balls to come and address the atrocities that the US and France and the Western countries have done to Africa. If you go to Africa, someone was telling me that Africa is a war-torn zone, and I was telling them that I've lived in Africa and I've never seen, in fact, I've never experienced war in Africa since I was born, and I'm 24 turning 25. So this is why we actually say that Africa should be liberated. France has been causing chaos, and the US in Congo, they are sponsoring other countries and M23. If someone lacks food, where do they get the money to purchase AK-24? You know how expensive it is. It is around $20,000. So if someone cannot have food, how are they able to purchase AK-27, AK-24, AK-20, 25, I mean, AK-27? If a person has no food, this is whatever is happening in the DRC. But we have puppet leaders who can't come out and call out the US and France for whatever they are doing just because of a conflict of interest. They want people in the DRC to be displaced. They want people to be surviving in chaos so that they can't concentrate on the exploitation of their mineral resources. And that's why any leader who is elected in DRC, when they come out to oppose whatever is happening in their own country, they get removed, and the opposition is being given powers. The opposition is being funded to cause mayhem and chaos, then elections, then change of leadership. This is how Africa has been working, some countries, but Africa is very stable. I've never seen war in my country. I've never seen war in my neighbors' countries. I just hear them on CNN and BBC. I've never seen any. So this is the time we should call out France. We should call out the US for the chaos that have happened in Africa. We say enough is enough, and we want to be liberated. We want our black brothers coming back to invest in our very well stable and peaceful continent. Thank you so much for having taken your time to watch this video. If it's your first time, please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, and commenting on this video. Thank you so much.